Stephen Curry, a man whose name had become synonymous with victory, was rummaging through a forgotten corner of his Bay Area home office with his wife, Asha. They were on a mission to declutter, a quiet domestic project on a rare afternoon off. He pulled a heavy, dust-covered box from the top shelf of a closet, labeled High School Memories. Inside, beneath a faded basketball jersey and a stack of old report cards, was his senior yearbook from Charlotte Christian School. "Look at this," he laughed, wiping a film of dust from the cover. "Ready to see a version of me with a lot more hair and a lot less confidence?" Aisha leaned against him, smiling, as he sat on the floor and opened the book. He flipped past pages of familiar faces, past the triumphant photos of the basketball team, his own lanky frame front and center. He was about to close it when a page near the back caught his eye. It wasn't the sports section or the class superlatives. It was a single full-page feature, a special dedication to one student who was already a star. And there she was, Isabella Rossi. His breath caught in his throat. It was a professional photograph, a stunning black and white headshot. Her eyes, large and luminous, seemed to hold a universe of secrets. Her smile was subtle, a knowing curve of her lips that was both inviting and impossibly distant. Even then, at 17, she possessed a kind of magnetic poise that set her apart from everyone else. The caption read, "Isabella Rossi, from our halls to the runways of Paris. Congratulations and bon voyage." "Steph, you okay?" Asha's voice brought him back to the present. She noticed the way he was staring at the photo, his easy smile replaced by a look of profound, distant contemplation. "Yeah, I'm fine," he said, his voice quieter than before. He traced the edge of the photograph with his finger. The glossy paper cooled beneath his touch. For a fleeting moment, he wasn't a 4-time NBA champion, a husband, and a father. He was just Wardell, a skinny 17-year-old kid with big dreams, staring across a crowded hallway at a girl who seemed to be from another planet. "Who is she?" Aisha asked gently, her curiosity piqued by his uncharacteristic silence. "Isabella Rossi," he said, the name feeling foreign on his tongue after so many years. "Someone I knew back then." "Knew how? Like you two were friends?" Stephen let out a short, self-deprecating laugh. "Nah, definitely not. I asked her out once." He paused, the memory replaying in his mind with startling clarity. "She turned me down." Asha's eyebrows shot up in playful disbelief. "She rejected Stephen Curry?" "I wasn't Stephen Curry then," he reminded her, a nostalgic smile returning to his face. "I was just Dell's son, a kid who could shoot but was still trying to figure everything else out. She was already Isabella Rossi." "Tell me what happened," Aisha said, settling on the floor beside him, intrigued by this untold chapter of his life. He stared at the photo, at the girl who was on the cusp of a global odyssey. He had never told anyone this story, not his parents, not his closest teammates. It was a small, insignificant moment, a tiny footnote in a life filled with monumental victories. But seeing her face again, he felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to give the memory a voice. It was the spring of 2006. Stephen had spent weeks building up the nerve. Isabella Rossi was a legend at Charlotte Christian. She was a year older, and while other students were worried about prom dates and final exams, Isabella was flying to New York and Milan for casting calls. She'd been discovered at a local mall 2 years prior and was now signed to a major international agency. She moved through the school hallways with an ethereal grace, often dressed in simple, elegant clothes that made the trendy outfits of her classmates look childish. She was quiet, polite, and seemed to exist on a plane entirely separate from the rest of them. To Stephen, she was the epitome of everything he wasn't: worldly, impossibly sophisticated, and already living a life most people could only dream of. He was a talented basketball player, yes, but his future was still an unwritten question mark. He finally cornered her by her locker one Tuesday after school. His heart was hammering against his ribs, his palms sweating. She was packing her bag, getting ready to leave for what he'd overheard was a 3-week stint in Europe. "Hey, Isabella," he'd managed to say. his voice sounding thin and reedy. She turned, her large, expressive eyes landing on him. She offered a small, polite smile. "Oh, hi, Stephen." She knew his name. That alone felt like a victory. "I was, wondering," he stammered, feeling his face grow hot. "There's a spring dance next month, and I was wondering if you, maybe, would want to go with me." The air crackled with silence. He felt as though the entire hallway had stopped to watch. Isabella's expression didn't change, but a flicker of something sympathy perhaps softened her eyes. She shifted her weight, hugging a textbook to her chest. "That's really kind of you to ask, Stephen," she said, her voice gentle and measured. "But I won't be here. I'm leaving for Paris tomorrow for a photo shoot with Vogue." Vogue. The word hung in the air between them, a testament to the chasm that separated their worlds. He was talking about a high school dance in a gymnasium, decorated with crepe paper and balloons. She was talking about Paris. "Oh," he said, the single syllable a balloon deflating. "Right, of course. That's, wow, cool. Maybe some other time," she added, a kind but ultimately empty platitude. They both knew there wouldn't be another time. She was already gone. He nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, have a great trip." He walked away, feeling the weight of his own insignificance. It wasn't a cruel rejection. It was simply a statement of fact. They were on two different trajectories, rocketing in opposite directions. "Wow," Asha said softly when he finished the story. "So she was already a big deal." "The biggest," he confirmed. "It wasn't just a high school crush. It was like having a movie star walking your halls. But you know what? That rejection taught me something." "What's that?" "That sometimes you're just not in the same league. And that's okay. It's not a judgment. It's just reality. It pushed me. If I wanted to be on that level, in my own field, I had to work. It lit a fire under me." Aisha studied the yearbook photo again, a thoughtful expression on her face. "So, whatever happened to her? I feel like I remember that name, but it's been a while." That was the thing. Stephen realized he didn't know. "I got so consumed by college, the draft, the NBA, I never looked back. Her world and my world just, they never intersected again." "But you're thinking about it now," Aisha observed. "Yeah," he admitted. "I am. Why?" He was quiet for a long moment, the weight of the years settling upon him. "I guess I'm just at a point in my life where I'm curious about the paths not taken. About the people who were part of the journey, even for a moment. What kind of life did she build? Did she find happiness on those runways?" Aisha grinned, giving him a gentle nudge. "Well, you're Stephen Curry. You have the internet. I have a feeling you could find out pretty easily." "You think I should?" "I think," she said, her eyes twinkling, "that you've already decided to." He laughed. His wife knew him better than anyone. That night, long after the house had fallen silent, Stephen sat at his desk, the glow of his laptop illuminating his face. He typed Isabella Rossi into the search bar and hit enter. The initial results were a blinding cascade of glamour and fame. For the next hour, Stephen scrolled through a highlight reel of a life lived in the flash of 1,000 cameras. There were iconic Vogue covers from Italy, France, and the UK, runway photos where she walked for Chanel, Versace, and Dior, her face an impassive, beautiful mask. There were paparazzi shots of her at the Met Gala, on yachts in St. Bart's, and on the arm of a handsome European actor. For nearly a decade, from 2006 to 2015, Isabella Rossi wasn't just a supermodel. She was an era-defining force in fashion, a ubiquitous presence of impossible beauty. Then, around 2016, the stream of images thinned. The high-fashion editorials were replaced by tabloid headlines speculating about her whereabouts. The disappearance of Isabella Rossi. Supermodel burnout? Why fashion's biggest star walked away. The articles were filled with rumors of secret marriage, a struggle with addiction, a retreat to a spiritual ashram. None of it felt right. Stephen refined his search, adding keywords like foundation, charity, and where is she now? He sifted through pages of dead ends and outdated gossip. Finally, after nearly 2 hours of digging, he found it. It wasn't in a glossy magazine or a major newspaper. It was a small, unassuming article on the website of a local news station in Asheville, North Carolina, published over a year ago. The headline was simple: Local Sanctuary Founder Honored for Work with Medically Fragile Children. He clicked the link. The article was about a woman named Isabella Rossi, the founder of Ilara's House, a nonprofit hospice providing palliative and respite care for children with rare, life-limiting genetic disorders. The 2006 graduate of Charlotte Christian School, the article noted, had traded the runways of Paris for the quiet, demanding work of end-of-life care. Stephen's stomach tightened. He scrolled down to the photo accompanying the article. There she was, older of course. The sharp, angular beauty of her youth had softened into a quiet, weary grace. Her long, dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore no makeup. She was kneeling on the floor of a brightly painted room, her arm around a small, frail child in a wheelchair. But her smile, that was what made Stephen's heart ache. It was no longer the subtle, knowing curve from the yearbook. It was wide, genuine, and lit with a kind of fierce, protective love as she looked at the child beside her. He read on, his world shrinking to the words on the screen. The article explained that Isabella had walked away from her modeling career in 2015 after her younger sister, Ilara, passed away at the age of 16 from Niemann-Pick disease, a rare and brutal lysosomal storage disorder. Devastated by the loss and disillusioned with the superficiality of her industry, Isabella had liquidated her Assetshire, New York penthouse, her stock portfolio, her lucrative endorsement deals, and poured every penny into creating Ilara's House. The facility wasn't a sterile hospital. It was described as a place of light and laughter, a sanctuary where children could live their remaining days with dignity and joy, and where their families could find support and community. The principal of a local school was quoted, "Isabella doesn't just fund this place. She is this place. She's here from dawn until dusk. She holds these children, reads to them, comforts their parents. She does the work no one else wants to do. She loves them." But it was the final paragraph that hit Stephen like a physical blow. It mentioned that Ilara's House, despite its incredible impact, was facing an existential threat. The cost of specialized medical care was astronomical, and the foundation's initial endowment was nearly depleted. They were operating on a month-to-month basis, relying on small local donations to keep the doors open. They were projected to run out of funding within the year. Stephen stared at the screen, his mind reeling. Multiple sclerosis, a car crash, a special education program. The parallels to the story he'd once heard were uncanny, yet this felt somehow deeper, more profound. The girl who had rejected him for Vogue had become the very definition of selfless love. The woman who once graced the covers of magazines that sold dreams was now quietly, desperately trying to salvage the final days of children who were running out of time. He spent the rest of the night falling down a rabbit hole of research. He found the Ilara's House website. It was simple, heartfelt, and clearly designed by an amateur. There were photos of the children, not as victims, but as vibrant kids, painting, listening to music, celebrating birthdays. There was a bio of Isabella, which simply said, "Founder and Ilara's big sister." There was a donation button, linked to a GoFundMe page that had raised only 30 of its 500 goal. By the time the sun began to rise, casting a soft gray light into his office, Stephen was sitting in his trophy-filled room, thinking about a woman who had walked away from a world that worshipped her to serve children society had forgotten. The girl who had seemed so far above him in high school had in fact ascended to a moral altitude he could only admire from a distance. He knew what he had to do, but this couldn't just be about money. It had to be about honoring a legacy both Ilara's and the one Isabella was now building in the ashes of her grief. The next morning, Stephen didn't call Isabella. He didn't want to spook her or make it about their shared past. Instead, he called his financial advisor and the director of his and Asha's foundation, Eat, Learn, Play. "I need you to do some quiet due diligence," he instructed them. There's a small nonprofit in Asheville, North Carolina. It's called Ilara's House. I want to know everything. Their financials, their operational costs, their long-term needs. And I need this to be completely discreet. The founder can't know we're looking into it. Of course, Steph. His foundation's director, Chris, replied. Any particular reason for the interest? An old friend, Stephen said, the words feeling both true and inadequate. Someone who is doing the work that really matters. Within 48 hours, the report was on his desk. It confirmed everything the news article had hinted at, and more. Ilara's House was a model of compassionate care, but it was a financial ticking time bomb. The documents detailed how Isabella had systematically sold off her assets, pouring over $15 million of her own money into the foundation. She took no salary. She lived in a small apartment above the facility. The report showed a shoestring budget, with nearly 98% of all funds going directly to patient care. It also showed a looming, insurmountable deficit. They needed at least $2 million to stabilize, and another $10 million to create an endowment that would secure their future permanently. The numbers were staggering, but what struck Stephen most was a line item in the budget for family memory making. Isabella had allocated funds for professional photographers, trips to the local zoo, and birthday parties, ensuring that families could create beautiful, lasting memories with their children before it was too late. This wasn't just a hospice. It was a temple of love, built by a woman who had turned her heartbreak into a shield for others. Stephen knew a simple, anonymous donation wouldn't be enough. This wasn't just about saving a facility. It was about amplifying a mission. He decided on a new plan. He called Chris back. I'm going to host a special gala for the foundation, Stephen announced. A fundraising event. But we're not going to present it that way. We're going to frame it as an awards ceremony, honoring unsung heroes in community health. And Ilara's House is going to be our primary honoree. That's a great idea, Steph, Chris said. It will bring a lot of attention to their cause. I want to do more than that, Stephen continued. I want to set up a meeting with the director of Ilara's House. Not me, personally. I want you to go on behalf of Eat, Learn, Play. Propose a partnership. Tell them we want to honor their founder at our upcoming gala in Charlotte, and that we will cover all expenses. Don't mention my personal connection. Let them think it's a standard partnership inquiry. And what's the end game? Chris asked. The end game, Stephen said, a clear vision forming in his mind, is to give Isabella the platform she walked away from. But this time, she'll be using it to tell a story that the world actually needs to hear. 2 weeks later, Isabella Rossi received a perplexing phone call. The executive director of the Eat, Learn, Play Foundation, a major national charity founded by Stephen Curry and his wife, wanted to honor Ilara's House at a gala. They wanted to fly her and her small staff to Charlotte, put them up in a luxury hotel, and present her with an award for her work. Isabella's first instinct was to say no. She had spent years avoiding the spotlight, finding solace in the quiet, meaningful work of her hospice. The world of galas, gowns, and public recognition was a life she had deliberately and painfully shed. I don't think so, she told her program director, a kind, middle-aged woman named Maria. That's not what we're about. It feels wrong. Isabella, Maria pleaded, her voice filled with gentle urgency. I know you hate this stuff, but we have to be realistic. We have 3 months of funding left, maybe 4. This isn't just an award. It's a lifeline. The people at this event, they're the kind of donors who could save us. Please, just consider it. Isabella looked out her office window at the hospice garden, where a father was pushing his daughter on a specially designed wheelchair swing. The girl's laughter, weak but pure, drifted up to her. Maria was right. This was no longer about her comfort. It was about them. She reluctantly agreed. The night of the gala, Isabella felt a profound sense of dislocation. She stood in a glittering ballroom at a 5-star hotel in Charlotte, wearing a simple black dress she'd owned for years. She was surrounded by a sea of wealth and power business moguls, celebrities, and philanthropists. It was a world she once navigated with effortless ease, but now she felt like a ghost, an observer from another dimension. She clutched a small glass of water, her knuckles white, feeling the familiar pang of anxiety that had preceded every runway show. After a series of speeches from local dignitaries, Asha Curry took the stage to introduce the keynote speaker, her husband. The room fell into a reverent silence as Stephen Curry, looking elegant in a tailored suit, walked to the podium. Isabella's breath caught. Stephen Curry. The name from the phone call hadn't fully registered until this moment. She remembered him, of course. The quiet, determined basketball player from her high school. The one with the kind eyes and the awkward, heartfelt invitation. She had followed his career from a distance, impressed by his incredible success and the dignified way he handled his fame. Their eyes met for a brief, electric moment across the crowded ballroom. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. In that instant, they weren't a global icon and a hospice founder. They were just two kids from Charlotte, their paths, once so divergent, now strangely, inexplicably converging. "Good evening," Stephen began, his voice calm and resonant. "We're here tonight to talk about heroes. We usually think of heroes as people who win championships, break records, or achieve incredible fame. I've been lucky enough to experience some of that. But I've learned that true heroism often lives in the quiet places, far from the roar of the crowd." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room before landing, once again, on Isabella. "I want to tell you a story about someone I knew in high school," he said. "She was brilliant, beautiful, and destined for greatness. The kind of person everyone knew was going places. I was just a kid trying to make the basketball team, and she was already on her way to Paris to shoot for Vogue." A murmur of intrigue rippled through the audience. Isabella felt her face flush, a phantom heat from a long-ago high school hallway. "I got up the courage to ask her to a dance," he continued with a wry smile. "And she did me the great favor of turning me down. Gently but firmly. She had a bigger world waiting for her. At the time, I thought it was a rejection. I thought it was about me not being good enough." His voice grew stronger, more passionate. "But I was wrong. It was never about me. Sometimes people say no to one path because they are being called to a much more important one, a path of purpose." He looked directly at Isabella, his eyes holding hers. The world watched as Isabella Rossi conquered the fashion industry. She became more famous than she could have ever imagined. But while we were all looking at the covers of magazines, she was watching her younger sister, Elara, fight a battle against a rare disease. And in that fight, she found her true calling. The room was utterly silent. In 2015, at the absolute peak of her career, Isabella Rossi disappeared. Stephen's voice cracked with emotion. She walked away from it all, not for a scandal, not for burnout. She walked away to build a sanctuary, a place of love and dignity for children at the end of their lives. She took her grief and her fortune and built Elara's house. He gestured toward Isabella, who was now standing, tears streaming down her face. "The world thinks it lost a supermodel, but it was wrong. Humanity gained a true hero." She traded the applause of the fashion world for the quiet laughter of children who needed her. She is doing the work that matters. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "Which is why we're here tonight. Not just to give her an award, but to make sure she can keep doing that work forever." He opened it. The Eat, Learn, Play Foundation is honored to announce a $10 million endowment for Elara's house, ensuring that no family will ever be turned away. A collective gasp swept the room, followed by a thunderous, sustained ovation. But Stephen wasn't finished. "And one more thing. We are also funding a new, state-of-the-art research wing at Duke Children's Hospital, dedicated to finding a cure for Niemann-Pick disease. It will be called the Elara Rossi Center for Genetic Hope." Isabella let out a sob, covering her mouth with her hand as Maria hugged her. The applause was deafening. Later that evening, in a quiet corner of the hotel lobby, Stephen and Isabella talked alone for the first time in nearly 2 decades. "I still can't believe this is real," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Why, Stephen? Why would you do all this?" He was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "Do you remember what you told me that day by your locker?" he asked. "You said, maybe some other time." She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "I do. I've thought about that. You weren't just turning me down. You were choosing your path. You were already on your way to something else. I spent the next 20 years chasing championships, focusing on winning. And you spent them learning a deeper truth. You walked away from a world that celebrates the superficial to create a world that cherishes every last breath." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Finding out what you've built, what you've sacrificed, it was a lesson for me. A lesson in what legacy really means. It's not about the trophies on the shelf. It's about the lives you touch." "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "how different things might have been if I had said yes?" Stephen considered the question seriously. "I used to," he admitted. "But now I know. If you'd said yes, you might have gotten swept up in my world. You might have become Isabella Curry. The world would have had another celebrity power couple. But those children, the ones you've held and comforted, they would have lost their champion. Ilara's house wouldn't exist." He met her tear-filled eyes. "Your rejecting me wasn't the best thing that ever happened to me. Your rejecting me was the best thing that ever happened to them. And that is infinitely more important than any high school dance." Today, Ilara's house is a thriving, permanent sanctuary, a national model for pediatric palliative care. The Ilara Rossi Center for Genetic Hope is at the forefront of research, giving hope to families around the world. Isabella, free from the burden of fundraising, still spends her days at the hospice, not as a founder or a director, but simply as Ilara's big sister, offering comfort and love. Stephen Curry went on to win more accolades, but he often says that the night he honored Isabella Rossi was his most important victory. It taught him that the most profound rejections are not endings, but redirections. They are the universe's way of clearing a path for a purpose far greater than the one we had imagined for ourselves. The supermodel who rejected a future basketball legend didn't just disappear. She re-emerged, transformed by grief into a force of unconditional love. And the boy who was rejected learned that true greatness isn't measured by what you gain, but by what you give away, and that sometimes the greatest gift another person can give you is the freedom to become who you were truly meant to be.